Hey everybody, and welcome back for the second half of our interview. So if you didn't listen to episode 007, you probably ought to go back and listen to that again. Where in that episode we talked about Advisory Circular 150/5200-38 with Miss Amy Anderson of the FAA. Miss Anderson is a wildlife biologist for the FAA and helped write these. So she's a great source on learning about these advisory circulars. And we did one long interview, and we decided to break them up into two halves during editing. So that one was on 38. Today is the what I would actually think is the more interesting of the two, to tell you the truth. And that is about Advisory Circular 33C. In long form, that's 150/5200-33C as in Charlie. And yeah, in this one we just go over the advisory circular, and we learn some great, cool information about this AC, and some info that I really think is going to help you guys down the line with your own airports. All right, I've done enough yammering on this intro, so let's dive right in. As soon as I hit the button, you're probably going to hear me and then Amy talking about 33C. So from there, yeah, if we cover 38, let's just dive right into the newest AC, which would be 150/5200-33C, which that just went into effect the 21st of last month, I believe, which would be February 21st, 2020. Yep. So this advisory circular AC covers hazard. Its subject title is hazardous wildlife attractants on or near airports, and this one effectively cancels out. Well, doesn't effectively. It does cancel out 33B, its predecessor. So actually, let's while I got 33B in the conversation, let's talk a little bit about what changed. Like, what is there anything that stands out brand new in 33C that wasn't really covered in B, or anything maybe been clarified or anything along those lines?
Oh, sorry. You can edit that out, right? You can edit that out, right? My dog barking.
No, well, I think that just comes with the circumstances. Now mine's sleeping beside me, so.
Yeah, I think I startled her, but because I was looking for my I need to plug in my computer, and I think, yeah. Anyway, she's always sleeping in the office with me, so. Okay, so 33C. What we tried to do with 33C was to add in all of the information that we have acquired through studies that have been conducted over the past 10, 15 years on habitats and how they attract wildlife. 33B was written pretty vaguely on purpose, because it had to cover all of the potential habitat attractants across the country. So, when it said stuff like wetlands or agriculture, it just made very broad generalizations that, agriculture attracts hazardous wildlife. Well, we've had so many questions about different types of agriculture that the FAA worked with the USDA Wildlife Services and the National Wildlife Research Center to conduct studies on different types of agriculture to find out if there were some that were not as attractive, that were safer for airports to either conduct on nearby lands or for adjacent property owners to conduct. Same with wetlands. Some wetlands, open water wetlands, those sorts of wetlands attract waterfowl and more hazardous types of wildlife, whereas densely forested wetlands might not attract the types of hazardous wildlife that we're trying to keep away from airports. So we wanted to make some clarifications on that and use the studies, the data, the results from the studies that have been conducted to flesh it out a little bit, to answer some of these questions that we've been getting. So I think that's one of the biggest changes, is hopefully you will see some new sections, specifically the mariculture and aquaculture under agriculture, because we have had some some case studies with those types of habitat uses. And so there's more detail, I think, and hopefully will be helpful. I mean, it's always case by case, regardless. It's like we can put this in a document that a certain type of habitat is a hazardous wildlife attractant, but at the end of the day, it's really hard to say, yes, it absolutely is, or no, it absolutely isn't. It really is a case by case basis. And whenever I get questions from the field, is this blueberry farm going to be a wildlife hazard attractant? Of course, my first thought is, well, of course it is, something, but it's prudent always to, how big is it? Are there any other blueberry farms around? Are there, where is it located? How far is it away? What other types of land use are there in the area? So there's more to it than just making a call based on a piece of paper.
Right. Yeah. There's no blanket that really covers everything.
Absolutely not. There is a big picture, and all of these habitats and the operations of the airport, it's all connected, and they all affect each other. So anyway, that being said, hopefully the guidance will answer some questions or make more questions. I don't know, but that's okay. Give us the questions that you have. And if it's something that we hadn't thought of before, or if it's in a new situation that biologists or airports are coming across in the field, then these are fluid documents. We can change them, we can update them. And it's always good to hear what is happening in the field. So we always invite questions and suggestions on advisory circulars. The other thing, NAC 33C, that is a little bit different is in section 4, it's called the Protocol for Continual Monitoring. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's 38. Hello.
Yeah, we've run it. It's a different document now.
Yep. Recommended procedures for the FAA, airport operators, and other government entities regarding off-airport habitats or land uses. Because we get so many questions about off-airport land use and what airports can do about off-airport land use, because they're not the owners typically of the land. And sometimes those land uses conflict with airport operations. We decided to put in kind of, it's a protocol that we use typically if we get questions about offsite land use. And I think we did it just to assist airports and biologists in what kinds of questions you should ask, how you can stay involved in what's happening adjacent to your airports, being involved with local planning meetings, those sorts of things. Because some people, I don't think they understand or realize until things are already being constructed, what is happening around their airports. And at that point, it's a little too late to try to work out some sort of mitigation strategy with these projects and the landowners. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
I said, thinking of that, that's got me thinking though too, is now when it comes to the this offsite thing we're talking about with Section 4, doesn't that also change with depending on the type of airport that we're talking about, is how far out, like, we're talking off airport, like how far we're talking away by off airport, like, in Section 1, it's actually, in 1.2, it cites an airport serving piston-powered aircraft. They want a separation distance from these they want like 5,000 feet. So can we talk a little bit about that, and like maybe
Sure.
not so much like we'll go back to the hazards themselves, but just how far off are we talking about for these different airports?
Okay. So the smaller GA airports that serve those sorts of aircraft, that distance away from the airport was the 5,000 feet was determined based on the approach and departure elevation of the type of aircraft, and how far out before it's not within that kind of danger zone of the birds. So that's one distance. The other is for the larger aircraft, and mostly for all certificated airports, is 10,000 feet and then out to 5 miles. And again, that 5 miles is based on the elevation that aircraft travel when they are approaching and departing the airspace, or to get to the runway.
Yep.
Or to get high enough out of that danger zone where most of the strikes occur. Those distances were determined based on science, but it's generally a rule of thumb. It's not like we are requiring airports to try to control everything that happens within 5 miles of the airport. We understand that is not remotely possible. And we're just saying it's a good idea to know if there are attractants, or if someone is getting ready to construct something that it potentially could be an attractant for hazardous wildlife. Again, we don't hold airports responsible for something that is being constructed on someone else's property. What the grant assurances say, if an airport has taken money from the FAA, is that they're at least aware of it, and if it's something that's going to cause problems, that maybe they've reached out to their local community planner or whatever and said, we think that this might be a problem for our airport, and just shown that they're aware of it, shown that they've contacted somebody and said, we're a little worried about this. Do we expect them to get, to stop something?
Right.
Not on their own. I mean, if there a landfill is getting ready to be constructed at the end of a runway, then we're hoping that they would know that this is happening, and that the airport contact the regional FAA office and say, we're really concerned about this. And then that can sometimes be elevated. Sometimes it's elevated up to headquarters and to the administrator to write letters and say, we really think this is a terrible idea. And maybe we can affect some change when it comes to those sorts of known hazardous attractants, and assist an airport with that. I mean, we don't expect them to do this all on their own. We want to assist them, but they need to know. They need to know what's going on in order for us to assist them, because in Washington, D.C., we don't know where every landfill is going to be proposed, or you know what I mean. It's like
Right.
There should be some communication. There should be some coordination. And again, nothing in this chapter 4 is required of an airport. We're just offering this as an outline of how they might be able to help them coordinate or work with their local authorities on land uses outside of their control. Because over the past 10 years, I think due to some great work by the qualified airport wildlife biologists, working with the airports, coming up with great management plans, strikes on the airport property have decreased, and damaging strikes have decreased. Most of our issues now are with strikes occurring above land that is not owned by the airport or off-site. So we're trying to figure out a way that we can reduce those numbers as well. And there's no perfect way to do that. So this is, again, just an outline of a way to attack it, I guess, for airports. So maybe they understand what some of the processes are and how they can be involved. No, we're not saying that, they have to hire a biologist to go out and do surveys, 5 miles away from the airport. That's not realistic.
Right. And I think one thing too, though, is that I think this also helps to show airports that they're not alone either. They don't, you don't have to go out, I don't want to word this improperly, but they don't have to just sit back and take it. There are ways, you can bring into discussion with the FAA and maybe make some amendments. I'm just thinking if there's some airport that is truly worried about something, it opens an avenue where they might not be able to actually do anything about it, but they can at least get a discussion going, and that's half the battle. There is just start talking, get it in topic, and
Right.
I think that really helps. Just let these airports know that they don't have to, I guess, sit back and take it. I guess is one way to put it.
Right. And that's
Yeah.
right. It's just a matter of keeping those lines of communication open with the appropriate agencies, local agencies, and being a voice at the table when decisions are being made. Airports are very, very important to the local communities where they exist, and for financial reasons and many other reasons. So they deserve to be a voice at the table when it comes to planning and land use around around their property. And yes, it's something else the airports need to worry about. I mean, don't get me wrong, I understand airport sponsors have a lot on their plate already, just dealing with what's inside the fence. But being a voice in the community and in the local government agencies, I think will also serve them very well. And we're always here to help, but we just need them to communicate with us and ask for help, So that was one of the biggest, when we put this out for comment initially, we got more questions and concerns about this specific chapter because the commenters made the assumption that the FAA was requiring these recommendations, requiring these actions of airports, and airports are saying, well, we can't afford this. This is going to be a whole new staff member that we need to hire. Or, you know, they, for lack of a better word, everyone kind of freaked out. and we took all of their comments very seriously, and took a lot of the suggestions people made on how we could change the wording, and communicate better what our intention was. It was never to require airports to do something more. It was to educate and to make them aware that there are avenues that they can take to help themselves when it comes to offsite land use, offsite attractants. And that was really the gist. And to say, we're here as well. This is how the FAA would review something that's happening offsite, and we're just sharing that, basically.
Right, and I think that's very, very helpful. Is I just keep having this one quote from the pirate movies going through my head. Is they're not so much rules as guidelines. But
yes.
I forget which one. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I think that's awesome for folks to know, and hopefully, folks listening to this will, they'll click, and that, these aren't, the FAA is not dropping the hammer. It's my way or the highway. It's coming out. We want to help. We want to help you guys do the best you can to manage your airports for these wildlife hazards that may or may not be occurring around your particular airport. Mm-hmm. But at least, have it in the back of your head that, there's help out there. There are ways to mitigate this, or these issues. Mm-hmm. So I think that's awesome. And I think hopefully folks are gonna take that away from this episode, that there are ways.
And John Weller and I, the two wildlife biologists up at headquarters, are always happy to get questions from airports, biologists, industry groups, because it helps us know what's going on out in the field if there are questions. It makes, I love it. I love getting questions. I love trying to help people solve their issues. And again, I mean, I learn more every time I get a new situation that comes up, and it's something that, we can use to help others when the next situation comes up, because every airport is different. I mean, it's just
every one of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to me to learn what's going on at all of these different airports and of the different situations that they're coming up against. And we don't have all the answers. I mean, we just don't. Sometimes we really have to figure things out as we go, because each situation is different. And that's what makes our job exciting. It's not necessarily the same thing every day. It's some kind of new challenge when we get the questions. So anyway, hopefully, please call, please, email, let us know that you're having problems or questions. That's what we're here for.
So actually, I was going to ask you at the end, but maybe this be a good way to put it. How is the best way for an airport to get a hold of you?
The best way, honestly, is email. And our email addresses are super easy, and they're on our website, the wildlife part of the FAA.gov website. amy.anderson@faa.gov, and John is john.weller, spelled just like it sounds, at faa.gov. And email, and yeah, for me, emailing is just the best way. And our phone numbers are also listed on the website. So if that's the way you want to contact us, that's also available.
Awesome. Yeah, because I know somebody's probably going to be sitting there just trying to write down. People probably already have questions for you. But I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you can hear that. My neighbor started running his weed whacker, and it's kind of distracting me a little bit, trying to read my notes, talk to you, and try to push that sound out at the same time. So I'm not sure if you can hear that or not, but
I didn't actually hear it, so
okay.
It's all good. It's just part of working at home now. I get it.
Yeah, yeah, it's just modern circumstances now.
Yep.
uh, so just moving on, do we want to? So what do you think? We want to go on and maybe talk about some of these more attractive offsite hazards. Um, I guess I mean I think everybody should be pretty familiar. Um, I mean we got stuff like waste disposal areas like landfills and transfer sites, golf courses. I mean they're kind of classic. Uh, Agricultural areas. Um, Maybe that's one. Do we want to talk about like
Yeah,
more attractive ag versus less attractive ag?
that's a good one. So some of the more obvious agriculture that we would attempt to stay away from near airports is any seed or fruit producing agriculture, sunflowers, the blueberries, and it's so regional as well. The types of agriculture they're planting out in California is different than what they're doing in Virginia. So it really is just so region specific. But basically, generally anything that's going to attract birds and wildlife for food. One of the things that we get a lot of questions about is haying, growing vegetation for hay, and we've found that is not as attractive. The time of attractant is when it's being harvested, and as long as there is mitigation prepared or happening in the management plan for the haying that's happening, when the harvesting is happening, then that's really, it's the same as mowing. I mean, the same types of thing happens when you're mowing the airfield. You're going to get, the insects are going to be uncovered, and the birds are going to be following behind the machinery trying to snatch up the insects. So, I mean, but during most of the year, it's not that attractive to hazardous wildlife. One of the things that I had specific or, experience with was the aquaculture, like oysters, growing oysters in the bay, in cages. And we determined that as long as the cages are submerged, they're not really an attractant to birds, because the way the oysters are grown, they're in this netting material inside the cages. It's almost, I mean, it's really impossible for the birds to even get to the oyster spat, when they're young and growing. It's just a matter of how it's being conducted, and that is important to know when you're trying to make the determination of hazard. So the only time that it might be more attractive is when you're bringing up the cages and removing the oysters. The birds are going to be attracted. But again, how far away is it from the airport? What elevation are the birds going to be flying if they're attracted to something that's happening right above the water? There's just so many questions. And typically, speaking from our experience and from studies, it's just not that attractive to the birds, except during maybe one specific time. One of the things that we've come across is in the Southwest, where they grow, I think it's alfalfa.
Yep.
Where they flood the fields for irrigation and basically create this wonderful
little mini marsh.
Exactly. And wow, the cranes, the geese, all of the birds that are attracted to this, during the irrigation time is incredible. That's bad.
Yes, it is.
So definitely something to be aware of, and something for if somebody's just wanting to create an alfalfa field next to the airport, that is something that the airport is going to want to say, whoa, wait a minute. Because sandhill cranes are going to do some damage. So again, region and location of the field itself. And it may only be attractive during very specific times of the year, but the airport needs to be aware of that, and be prepared to mitigate, because at the end of the day, the landowner is still going to do what they want to do. And if it's
right, it's still their property. All we can do is try to, ask.
Yeah. And if that's what they're going to do, maybe there is some communication, coordination with the landowner, so the landowner can say, hey, I'm getting ready to flood my fields. And the airport can be ready for some backup mitigation if necessary, or just to be able to be keeping their eyes open for that, over that area during that time of year. That's best case if the field goes in as planned. And it can't hurt to ask. Can we control how the landowner is going to act or how involved they want to be? Absolutely not. It's not realistic, but we can try. We can
That's all you can do is try.
Well, chances are, if the birds attracted to your field are ingested by an engine and the plane goes down in your alfalfa fields, nobody wants that. So, I mean, the chances of that are probably slim, but at the same time, a little gloom and doom might not be a bad thing to make people realize the reality of the situation, I guess.
Yep. Because that is a very stark reality. Because I'm just thinking, like you were mentioning the sandhill cranes, and I'm just thinking maybe not everybody's real familiar with them. Picture a great blue heron. It's kind of a ubiquitous species, coast to coast. Picture a great blue heron, but in flocks of, between 3 and 300. And it sounds like a pterodactyl going over when they're calling. But I was thinking somebody's not familiar with like what are they talking about? Sandhill cranes, if somebody's not familiar, but yeah. Right. Picture 300 great blue herons all packed together going to an ag field. It's very impressive, but it's also very hazardous.
Yes.
No, that's great. There's one other habitat that I was kind of want to talk about is that's in this 33C, and that's section 2.9. The habitat for state and federally listed species on airports, and by listed we're meaning T&E species, threatened and endangered.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Good
so
question.
yeah, so just kind of want to talk about that because, right in the very first sentence really is an airport's air operations area is an artificial environment that has been created and maintained for aircraft operations. Because an airport's aircraft operations area can be markedly different from the surrounding native landscapes, it may attract wildlife species that do not normally occur or that occur only in low numbers in the area, which is a pretty good way of getting on that T&E list. So yeah, I mean, with just with how unique an airport is, based on the surrounding landscape, either it's so one of these T&E species may become attracted, or I've heard of groups wanting to, approaching airports wanting to create habitat on or near an airport because of this uniqueness. So yeah, can we go over that a little bit more?
Absolutely. This is something that probably causes us more headaches than anything else. Hold on just a second.
Yep. Yeah, I'm located here. I'm in Arizona. I'm not sure if I actually made you aware of that or not beforehand.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm in Arizona, so we have species. The hot bird around here, at least for right now, is like our southwest willow flycatchers. That small little bird that always they're attracted to more wetter woods. You see them a lot of edges. So you always hear about them in the area. And they're on Arizona's T&E list. And I mean, we have the more, everybody kind of wants to talk about California condors, but as long as you're not in the Grand Canyon, they're not as big. I mean, if you're at Grand Canyon Airport, then yeah, they're kind of a bigger topic. But yeah, just so it's just something that you're always thinking about. I know.
Sorry,
Yep.
I'm looking for my plug to plug in my computer because it's actually getting kind of low. And oh, there it is. Oh my God. Okay. All right. All right. Here we go. Okay. Now I feel better because that was distracting me for a second.
Okay. Oh, is that what that beeping was earlier?
No, that was my other computer going to sleep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. So, we have some very specific examples of situations where we are having to deal with either the local, like the state Department of Environmental Protection or Fish and Wildlife folks, or the National Fish and Wildlife folks. Because something that may be protected by the states may not be protected under the federal law, and vice versa. So we've got to deal with both. And again, I keep saying this, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but it's so dependent on the region where the airport is located, because every case is so different. We have several airports in the Northwest that are having to deal with specific types of meadowlarks. Is it meadowlarks? Butterflies and ground burrowing mammals, things like that, where the animal itself might not be a hazard. However, if you're not allowed to modify the habitat because there is a small bird that likes to live in it and that bird is threatened or endangered, And the Fish and Wildlife Service is saying, well, you can't mow or do anything to this part of your airport to protect that little bird. That might actually end up attracting other types of birds or animals that are hazards. So we've managed to, out specifically in the Northwest, this is a battle that's been going on for a long time, with critical habitat being assessed on airports. And there has been a letter that has been written to say that that region of the Fish and Wildlife Service will not require the airports to protect the land for the species, for reasons such as that species is actually in more danger if the land that they're preserving is next to a runway, because those bird species are likely to be ingested or fatalities from aircraft. So it's not a great location to have critical habitat for birds. So that's just common sense type stuff. But it took a long time to convince the Fish and Wildlife Service in the Northwest region that preserving these critical habitat areas on airport property is really not helpful for the species itself. And it's very dangerous for the airport. So, and unfortunately, just like every government agency, each region handles things differently. We wish everybody was on the same page and there was some consistency throughout the country, but there just isn't. And we're working, we have an MOA, a Memorandum of Agreement, between the FAA and several other federal agencies, including the Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the USDA, it says that we will all work together to ensure that even though we have different missions, airports want to get rid of the wildlife on airport property at least, and while Fish and Wildlife Service wants to save animals, and we don't necessarily want wetlands on airport property, but the Army Corps of Engineers mission is to protect wetlands. There's some conflict there, and we all get that. So let's work together to make informed decisions and safe decisions about critical habitat, about wetlands, about threatened and endangered species. The problem is not everyone even realizes that MOA exists. And it's very old, and we have been trying to update it for years. And again, it's a memorandum of agreement. It is not a law. It's not a federal law that says we're all going to work together. It is an attempt at coordination. So we have been trying to get this done for years, to have all the signatories provide updated and new language and to sign off on it. And our biggest challenge has been through the Fish and Wildlife Service, because they're getting a lot of pressure from their upper management and administrator. And so it's not been nearly as easy as we were hoping it would be. So we still have not gotten confirmation from the Fish and Wildlife Service at the headquarters office that they will sign the current draft that we have. So we are working on that. And part of the new memorandum of agreement was to do a better job of communicating that this MOA exists with the regional offices. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just listening to you.
Okay. I was like, I would hate to just be rambling on.
Right, it's kind of when you're driving on the road, you don't realize the you're talking to somebody and you don't realize the
and
call
you're like,
drop.
oh, yeah, that's not fun. So anyway, so that is one tool that we have attempted to create to help with these types of situations. And it's not perfect, and it doesn't work all the time. And we're trying. But when you're trying to get signatories from 6 or 7 different federal agencies, wow, that's a challenge in itself. But Fish and Wildlife Service has really been challenging, just with them. So anyway, we're working on that, and we want the regions to know that it exists. And it doesn't solve every problem. However, it is a tool for coordination and communication.
Hey, the more tools in your toolbox, the better off you are.
Yeah. I mean, and the more communication you have, the better off you are. That's why it never hurts to, depending on the airport, some airports have either a wildlife biologist on staff, which is wonderful, or they have somebody like you guys who are on call for them all the time, or a USDA person or whatever. And that person who's kind of in charge of their wildlife program, honestly, they should have a point of contact with these federal agencies that they might have to deal with when they're talking about dealing with threatened and endangered species.
Yep.
And they should have a relationship with that person. I mean, that is what I always found to be very helpful, is to know who it is that I need to talk to if all of a sudden I see a bald eagle starting to make a nest, on my property. What do I do? And work it out right initially as soon as possible, and have that relationship ready and there, so that when something like that comes up, that you know who to call and can work on getting those permits or authorizations to do what you need to do. One of the biggest issues we've had, for example, is in the state of New York and New Jersey. The state has huge conservation areas for the upland sandpiper and Savannah sparrow, a type of sparrow. Cody would know.
Yeah, up there it's savannas, grasshoppers, and henslows are a big deal up there.
And the airport in Atlantic City has, made agreements with the Conservation Commission up there many, many years ago that they would preserve this land on the airport property for the upland sandpipers and the sparrows. And it has just become such an issue, especially because nowadays there's only a few pairs of sandpipers that even hang out there anymore. Their populations, and there's been strikes with the sandpipers. So, you're like, well, that's not working to save these guys if they're laying eggs and nesting right next to the runway or taxiway. So we have been trying to assist the airport with getting that designation off that land. But it's been very difficult working with the Conservation Commission, because their rules say, well, all right, we can remove the designation of the conservation designation off of this, but you need to provide us with another 300 acres somewhere else. And that's has been absolutely impossible. Um, and so trying to come to a compromise is still ongoing, honestly. So I'm not going to say that there is an easy answer for these types of situations. Um, I'll tell you another story real quick of a better situation. Savannah, Georgia. They were having issues with a creation area that they had built um, as mitigation for wetland impacts many, many years ago. And the trees within the creation area had become big enough now that the wood storks, which are threat or endangered, I think they're just threatened now. I don't know. It's different. I mean, some states have different designations for them.
Yep.
We're starting to had constructed a rookery in these cypress trees now that were large enough for them to look attractive to the wood storks. And the wood storks, I mean, it was a beautiful rookery. And I was so excited to see it because the wood storks are just awesome. And then it started also attracting other wading bird species. And so, I mean, it was just the most gorgeous habitat for these rookeries. Unfortunately, it was in between two runways. The wood storks would start to soar over the runways during the afternoon in large flocks. And there had been a couple of very damaging strikes. And it was a significant hazard. Where do you start? Obviously, something needs to be done about this. So we worked with the Fish and Wildlife Service regional office there. And the biologist that we worked with understood the situation. He completely got it. He knew that it was a problem. So we worked with him. He was very easy to work with. Set up a study to determine, where these wood storks were coming from, where they were going to, their general travel patterns. Also, put some tracking devices on them, so it wasn't just observing with the eye, it was being able to track them. And also determine where the other rookeries were in the area. And there were quite a few. So it's not like removing this one rookery was going to result in the loss of the wood stork population. There were plenty of other places for these wood storks to go that were safer and farther away from the airport. So, we had to go through all the steps that were required. The airport did, an environmental assessment, get an environmental, an opinion letter from the Fish and Wildlife Service. There had to be mitigation involved. So, we went through all the legal process, but he worked with us every step of the way, and the airport during non-nesting season were able to go in and trim all of the branches that were being used for nesting and make that creation area less attractive. And they were allowed to go in and maintain it on a regular basis.
Nice.
So that was wonderful. That was such a nice coordination effort between the airport, the FAA, Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Army Corps of Engineers, because we were messing with a creation area that was permitted as mitigation for wetland impacts. So it can work out well. You just have to get all the players to the table and work with them, and hope that everyone uses common sense and is willing to work together. So, yeah, it really is so dependent on who you're working with and the region and what the exact situation is. That's why I think people get frustrated with us, because we don't have an easy cut and dried answer to their frustrating issues all the time. And I understand that is frustrating, but it's just kind of the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, but I think it's like that across. Well, I mean, it's definitely like that all across the wildlife realm. I mean, just coming from a wildlife background, I mean, nothing's ever cut and dry. It seems like every day is a different. Doesn't matter what job. If you're working with sparrows or fishers or an airport, it's every day is different, and I mean, half the time you got to invent your own tools to get the job done, anyways.
That's right.
But
or
yeah,
try different tools before you find the one or combination that is going to work.
Oh yeah, usually you come out with some Frankenstein-looking thing that's got half of this and half of that and a quarter of this, but it works. So what's the saying? If it looks stupid but it works, it's not stupid.
Well, then you need to patent it and
yeah. Oh, there's a lot of there's a lot of $1 million ideas just riding around the back of a dusty pickup truck.
I'm sure you're right. I need something to keep squirrels off my bird feeders right now because they're driving me crazy, but I can't even mitigate that in my own yard.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's something to do. It's a good quarantine project, I guess.
There you go. Yes.
But Amy, this has been a great episode. Thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with me and going over the 33 and 38, and I think everybody that listens to this is going to get a lot of great information and being able to. I think it's going to help too, just knowing they can get a hold of to you or John or and try to help out their own programs as much as possible.
Well, I was happy to do it, and I hope that it does clarify some things. And again, if it just creates additional questions, give us a call.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think if it doesn't create more questions, I mean, I think that's the one downside, is that if you have all the answers, then what are you doing it for anyways?
I know, right?
But all right, well, I think I'm good. I'll get out of your hair, let you get on the rest of your day, and thanks again for coming on, and well,
thanks, Chelsea, for working with me on the time situation. Sorry you missed your meeting today.
No, I'll get it in an email anyways. But.
All right, good deal. I was happy to be a part of it, and let us know if we can help out with any other podcast questions in the future.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah, we'll be in contact.
All right. Tell Cody I said hello.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, folks, that's it for today's episode. Before you walk out of here, make sure to hit that like or subscribe button, as well as leave us a review or a comment down below. Everybody that does leave us a review is going to be put in a hat to get some swag each week after we release one of these episodes. But yeah, that does it for me. So thanks again for sticking around this long, and we'll catch you next time.